Well, in one of the graduate classes that I teach, we have a week-long activity to explore ChatGPT and its uses in lesson planning and building more engaging topics for depth. You are asked to prompt ChatGPT using standards. How can I make a lesson for this standard, for example?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Vandal Theory, a podcast about science and research at University of Idaho. My name is Lee Cooper, and I'm an editor and science writer here at University of Idaho, and I will be your host for today. I'm joined by Danae, my co-host. Hi, Danae.
Hi, Lee. I'm Danae Lenz, the External Communications Coordinator at U of I.
How's it going today?
It's going pretty good. I'm excited about today's topic.
Excellent. So today, we are going to talk about artificial intelligence. And I know we've talked about artificial intelligence on this podcast before, but Danae, how many suggestions or examples do you give ChatGPT when you're asking it for help?
I give it a lot.
Yeah?
Yeah, so I have my ChatGPT divided up into different projects for different things, and you can give instructions for an individual project. And I was tweaking my instructions the other day, and I saw that my instructions were about 800 words.
Oh, wow.
And so it's like examples, and here's what you should always do, and things to look out for. And it varies by whatever the project is.
Sure.
Others, if I want it to help me edit something, I just have our U of I style guide in there, and I'm like, just run this against our U of I style guide. But I absolutely err on the side of giving it too much information than too little.
I don't give it enough instructions usually. You've shown me actually what you've done, and frankly, I'm just jealous, and I need to go and play with my setup because the stuff ChatGPT gives you is way more accurate and on point than what it gives me. So I need to spend some time there.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say it does take some time up front to really figure it out. And it gets sort of meta because then you're asking it like, hey, what can I do to your instructions to make you actually do what I want to do? Anyway, it can get kind of weird, but it's like a lot of work up front, and then it makes everything easier after that.
All right, so we're really going to dive into this idea today. We're going to meet William Tai, the coordinator for the Doceo Center in University of Idaho's College of Education, Health, and Human Sciences. Artificial intelligence, as we know, is already in our classrooms. Tai joins us to discuss how teachers can take advantage of AI for lesson planning and what ethical issues might arise with classroom AI use. Ready to go?
Yeah, let's get into it.
William, welcome to the Vandal Theory.
Thank you for the invitation.
All right. So, first thing, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do?
So currently, I'm the Doceo Center Coordinator. Got my PhD and dissertation all done in May of 2025. And my dissertation focus was on STEM education for pre-service teachers.
You mentioned you're in charge of the Doceo Center. What is that?
So the Doceo Center is actually the educational technology hub for the College of Education, Health, and Human Sciences. We manage as well as acquire new educational technologies that can be used by faculty, staff, pre-service teachers, and in-service teachers of the communities we serve.
Okay. So, teachers having problems with tech, they should come to you.
I mean, they have their own IT staff for that
Well,
too.
yes.
But if they want to test out some of the new educational technologies that they might have heard of on the market but not sure about purchasing, and if we have that inventory in stock, we can certainly provide them with an actual hands-on experience.
Cool. Okay. So, today we're actually looking at a subset of technology. We're going to focus today's conversation on AI and teaching. Before we start, can we just define, we're going to be talking about generative AI. Can you define that for us? Let's get everybody on the same page.
Generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI for short, in general, is an artificial intelligence that is trained from vast amounts of data to learn patterns, create new content based on user prompts, mimicking human creativity. That's the goal.
Okay.
Some examples of that, of these data sets that are used to train Gen AI include images, text, code, video, or sometimes even music. And some of the Gen AI models that we are currently familiar with, including the GPT series from OpenAI, Google's Gemini, Claude from Anthropic, Grok, and DeepSeek.
Okay. So in teaching, many of us are familiar with the classic help me come up with ideas for an essay type of prompt. What are some other things that teachers might be interested in doing with generative AI?
Honestly, it would make their workflow for creating or coming up with lesson plans a lot faster and more efficient. Other than generating ideas around, say, a standard, they could also use AI to give them a skeleton framework around the 5E model for engaging their students more in depth.
Okay. And I would even think like you're also being able to generate images of maybe a place that you're studying or what would be some of the other things that you could do that are not necessarily word based?
OpenAI came out with the Sora 2. It's a new video based social media platform that's housed within the OpenAI system where you can generate AI based videos based on user prompts of almost anything.
So fun ways to learn a topic.
It could be, or it could be used for purely entertainment too.
Okay, cool. All right. So that's like basic AI, what we're going to be talking about today. You're actually giving some talks in Boise around this topic, yes?
Yes, I'll be speaking at the Idaho Educational Technology Association down in Boise the first week of February.
What is one of the topics that you're going to be working on there?
In my opinion, one of the most important topics that we need to be talking about is the ethical foundations of using AI, especially in a education setting where if you want to be a classroom teacher and have AI implemented into your classroom for students to use, you need to know some of the things that could go wrong and how to defend against that is super important as a classroom teacher right then and there.
Can you give us the short version of what you're going to be talking about?
Absolutely. So we're going to focus on three topics. Number one, hallucinations. Number two, prompt injection attacks. And number three, machine bias.
I don't know any of those words. Yay, let's dive in.
Okay, so let's take hallucinations, for example, right? Hallucinations in Gen AI use is the stuff that Gen AI creates when it is supposed to give you facts.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a fake citation when you're looking up manuscripts for a literature review for the scholars and the academics, if you cite those and people go through the references and find out it's fake, your paper could be pulled.
Oh, I mean, I could see that happening. I mean, ChatGPT knows that you're supposed to have citations, so it gives you one. Whether it's real or not is up for grabs.
Absolutely, because it's based off of a probabilistic model to predict the next word that might be used. So if it goes off the hinges and creates a fake source and you cite it in your paper, you're just doing the academic world a disservice by not giving the original author or whatever original idea that it came from in the first place.
Right.
For example, Gen AI often creates fictional citations, which I just talked about in references, when you ask to search it for a credible source. So any kind of output should be checked rigorously. And to do that, there has to be a human in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not doing the work after Gen AI gives you an output, you're not being as rigorous as possible in implementing new technologies into the classroom.
Okay. So that was number one.
So let's talk about machine bias next.
Okay.
We'll leave prompt injection attacks last. Machine bias, it is the effect of incorrect assumptions made by machine learning models that sometimes overestimates or underestimates the importance of a given parameter. A good example of machine bias is the risk assessment algorithm, one of the pieces of software that is used to predict future criminals and reoffenders. This particular one was used to assess the chance of a reoffense if the person was released from prison. At the time, it ranked blacks as having higher reoffense scores than whites. However, after release, it resulted that the reoffenders were mostly whites over blacks that were being assessed with the system. This was back in 2016.
What was the cause?
You can find this article on ProPublica if you just Google machine bias. It started as, can we predict the chance of a reoffense by what we deem as criminal activity or criminals in prison? But because the people that might have written the code to have bias to skew the algorithm is therefore biased. So the machine running the algorithm is then biased or in overestimating or underestimating a parameter. For example, there were a pair of 18-year-old girls. They picked up some stuff off the ground. A woman came out running after them and said, "Hey, that's my kid's stuff." And this pair of 18-year-old girls dropped the stuff and walked away. But because a neighbor down the street had already called the police, they were arrested for theft. Compare that with another person who was picked up for shoplifting at Home Depot for $86.35 and has a prior criminal record. Put those two into that algorithm, and the 18-year-old girls that were charged went to jail, had a higher risk assessment score than the person with the prior criminal record that shoplifted at Home Depot. And therefore, the 18-year-old girls were not released, but the person who shoplifted at Home Depot was, and after they got out, reoffended.
Yeah. Well, it's biases everywhere. All right. So that was number
2.
2. Number 3.
Lastly, we are going to talk about prompt injection attacks. Now, a prompt injection attack is a cybersecurity attack where malicious actors create something seemingly innocent and innocent inputs to manipulate machine learning models. The vulnerability stems from these models' inability to differentiate or to tell apart between instructions from developers or the programmers that make the learning model and input from users. For example, an AI assistant might be asked to summarize a website, not knowing that a website or web page is booby-trapped. And that includes invisible commands, say like white text on a white background that the human eye can't see, but the machine can read.
Sure.
Telling the AI to ignore its original instructions and instead reveal sensitive information. And because of those instructions are written clearly for the machine to read, but not for the human eye, the model may unwittingly obey.
And that's pretty common? That's common enough?
It's common enough that we need to talk about it.
Okay.
Because if a student in a teacher's classroom were to prompt ChatGPT to make a fake web page with an active link with white text in the page itself and ask it to summarize, but to return the output in some other language than English, they will. So if that website or link gets sent to the teacher and the teacher has to evaluate the student's progress for making a web page and all it returns is Turkish poems and literature, then we have a problem.
I mean, would students do this just because it's entertaining?
Well, I mean, I imagine some students will because it's vastly entertaining. It creates some giggles. And I know that some students won't because for them, that's not doing the assignment. So to defend against these 3 misuse cases for Gen AI, I developed a professional development credit course being housed in Keep Learning, Idaho. That's equivalent to about 15 hours of work towards recertification or 1 credit. It's called The Ethical Foundations of AI for K-12 in-service teachers. At the end of it, those who take the PD course will walk away with a playbook of strategies and checklists that they can immediately implement into their classrooms right now.
Well, excellent. So you're doing a second talk down there as well. And
I am.
think this one is to help teachers work on their prompts. And the prompt being the thing that you tell AI, the instructions you give it.
That's correct. So I'm going to be talking about the basics of prompt engineering so that we can streamline user inputs into a Gen AI system to receive more desired output. Now, there are 3 examples of prompts that we can put into the system. There is zero-shot prompting, few-shot prompting, and chain of thought prompting.
Okay. Walk me through it.
Zero-shot prompting is a type of user input that contains no examples in the instructions and relies on pre-trained instructions to carry out its tasks from the Gen AI. An example of a zero-shot prompting is summarize this legal document in simple terms. Because there's no examples given, so there's no context given. It'll just spit out an output that's a best guess summary of the legal document based on the AI's pre-training.
Hmm.
Few-shot prompting is a type of user input that contains at least one example. Two or more is better, for examples, in the instructions to teach it how to do a specific or desired task. An example of a few-shot prompting is, I'm going to use quotes here. I like this example very much. A wetpoo, quote unquote, is a small furry animal native to Tanzania. An example sentence that uses the word wetpoo is, we were traveling in Africa and we saw these very cute wetpoos. To do a quote unquote farduddle means to jump up and down really fast. An example of a sentence that uses the word farduddle is, and that's the prompt you input into the AI chatbot that you're using, it might spit out, when we won the game, we all started to farduddle in celebration.
Okay. So you give an example and then fill in the blank,
Yep,
kind of like an SAT test.
absolutely. But it has an example to work with, and so it gives you a better desired output.
Okay.
And last is chain of thought prompting. It's a type of user input that boosts large language models. And these large language models are, equivalent to ChatGPT, Google Gemini, by prompting them to generate a step-by-step intermediate reasoning before giving a final answer. Therefore, mimicking human thought, which is thought to significantly improve on complex tasks like math, logic, and common sense reasoning.
Okay.
So, for example, solving a multi step math problem, but adding the words, break it down for me step by step into your user input, will make the Gen AI model show its reasoning for better accuracy. For teachers, it's helpful by letting them decide what their desired output is. Do they want simple tasks carried out by Gen AI, like summarizing? They want a more in depth output by providing context and examples? Or do they want to see the reasoning of the Gen AI for demonstration or argumentation purposes? In the end, it's all about the level of response you want from the Gen AI model that you're using.
And for teachers, what's going to be some really good uses of this?
Well, in one of the graduate classes that I teach, we have a week-long activity to explore ChatGPT and its uses in lesson planning and building more engaging topics for depth. You are asked to prompt ChatGPT using standards. How can I make a lesson for this standard, for example?
And I could imagine giving, here's another lesson, set it up like this. Or, I mean, like, at least on a written page.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could, like, some of my past students have uploaded the U of I lesson plan template
Oh,
into ChatGPT so that it can spit out step by step what they need to fill in. So it's more structured. But since we asked our teachers to use AI to generate lesson plans or to refine lesson plans, we also give them resources so that they can elaborate on the 5E model, which is what we emphasize during the class, to plan a lesson plan that integrates technology and uses the 5E model.
and just for those of us not in the teaching profession, can you quick define what the 5E model is?
The 5E model is an inquiry-based instructional framework for science and STEM.
Okay.
Okay. It has 5 phases: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. Build deeper understanding by connecting prior knowledge, hands-on investigation, concept clarification, applications to new contexts, and continuous assessment, aligning teaching with how people learn.
Okay. Just want to make sure people are caught up. Okay, cool. So they'll walk out with the ability to start doing some really snazzy and hopefully really efficient lesson planning and just, work in the classroom.
Absolutely. It might cut down your usage of your prep period down from hours every week to plan one lesson to maybe 30 minutes with, of course, the human-centered approach to using AI, which is check the resources it gives you.
And we really can't overemphasize the importance of protecting that prep period.
Absolutely.
All right. So the last thing I want to talk about is not some of the talks you're giving, but you and Dr. Alan Kitchell, who is an associate professor in the College of Education, Health, and Human Sciences, have been working together on a project basically with graduate students, helping them use AI as a study tool. Can you talk us through what was the question you were trying to ask and what happened?
The research question was, how did a cohort of doctoral students enrolled in early program research methods course perceive their engagement with a Gen AI chatbot intervention activity on their educational experience and learning outcomes?
And for those who don't know, the research class is basically how do you do research? And so
Yes,
the basic steps of how to do that and the tools available to them.
right. And this is in the quantitative research methods class, where students are introduced to advanced topics in statistics
Mhm.
and how to analyze their numerical data to try and explain in some way, shape, or form the results of their study.
So what'd you have them do and what'd you
So,
see?
in the 12 weeks that the data came from, there were 17 participants. Most of them are non traditional students or professionals.
Mhm.
And the intervention included weekly engagement, such as posing questions to AI, consider response, and write a written reflection back to the instructor.
Okay.
Dr. Kitchell gave his participants a survey pre intervention and post intervention with 6 qualitative interviews after 9 weeks of this intervention. So, in the numerical findings or quantitative findings, we found that the awareness of Gen AI chatbots improved significantly. The frequency of use also went up significantly,
Oh.
and the understanding of content also improved significantly.
Well, that's the cherry on top. That's what you're going for.
Right.
AI helped them learn.
While we also assessed belief and learning enhancement, it remained positive overall, but there was no significant change.
Okay. Is that interpreted as they didn't realize they were learning more?
There was still positivity around using Gen AI as a study tool, but it wasn't significant enough for us to say that it definitely changed the way the students learn.
Okay.
So then in our qualitative findings,
Okay.
we have separated them into positive attitudes and negative attitudes. Positive attitudes about Gen AI was that it was helpful, it lowered anxiety, and saved an incredible amount of time. Negative attitudes are listed as we need to be aware of AI hallucinations that did not line up with textbook support, and being aware that AI may lead to less deep understanding. So, in the end, and we have overall themes. Now, there are 3 to 4 positive themes and 3 to 4 negative themes overall. Overall, positive themes include enhanced learning and cognitive support, psychological and academic assurance, efficiency, utility, and future integration.
Okay.
Negative themes include accuracy,
Yeah.
bias, trust concerns, ethical misuse and academic integrity risks, and challenging user experiences and engagement resistance, on top of broader societal and systemic misuse in regards to AI.
So, I mean, in this case, they're using it in a class.
That's correct.
So they're the ones responsible for their own behavior for the most
Yes.
part.
One of the specific quotes that I saw was that we don't trust the output that Gen AI responds to us with, even though for the specific purposes of the class, it had a 90% accuracy in the information that it outputted.
How does one combat that? Or do you? Is this almost like them having a conversation with another student who will also oftentimes not be accurate because they're in the learning process as well? And this is just a way of kind of back and forth working through something?
Well, with every new technology, there is some kind of a level of resistance, if you will,
True.
to being able to accept that new technology and therefore implement it into our daily lives. I mean, look at cell phones. They're part of our everyday usage now. Everybody pretty much has one who is old enough to own one or permitted by their parents. Back when cell phones were still a brand new system, there were a lot of people that were against it. They were still wanting to use their wireless or cordless phones with the landline in their house instead of switching over to a cellular phone, which may cost hundreds of dollars at the time for a monthly plan.
All right. Well, William, thank you so much for coming on today. Is there any last thoughts you want to leave with everyone?
Sure. I'll say this. Gen AI is going to stay for a while. It's not going away. So we might as well learn how to navigate all of its aspects, including ethical use and its potential for furthering human development.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is just such a fascinating topic to me. For as much as I use AI, I too am thinking about the ethical issues behind it. And I really love that the people who are really on the front lines of researching AI and trying to implement it are also the ones that are speaking up probably the most about the potential downsides, potential ethical issues. Like, here's all the wonderful things it can do, but here's these things that you need to watch out for. And yeah, I feel like at the end there, he really summarized that well. Like, it helps with this, but it deters deep learning, etc. And I guess I just appreciate that fact quite a lot.
Right. They're not sitting there going, this is the bestest thing ever and there are no flaws. Like, they're saying, look, this is a great tool for specific things, but there are caveats, and this is what they are. We will lay them out right in front of you and give you, paths to, not fall into the traps.
Yeah. And I also it's a good reminder too. So he brought up the machine bias, but it's kind of interesting because it's not really machine bias. It's more our human bias being put into a machine. And I think that issue in particular is something that should stay front of mind, because obviously it can, if you just take it at its word and you don't delve into it further, there can be some major downsides.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not just my paragraph summary was inaccurate or worded in a way that comes across as biased. Like, there's human impacts to some of these larger models that you're putting a lot of trust in the machine. So you better understand what the model's doing. I think for me, I mean, there was so much that I took away from this, but the one that I found pretty funny was the fact that he was talking about a student for laughs might put a sentence written in white on a white Word doc or something like that, so that whenever the teacher runs it through a generative AI, they get something completely different or inaccurate from that assignment. And I was like, oh my gosh, would people do that? I'm not even sure that's real. And of course, then this weekend, I've mentioned on here before that I play Dungeons & Dragons, and my dungeon master gave us a code to break that he put a secret hidden cookie recipe into if we had run it through ChatGPT. So apparently it is real.
Yeah, some of the real world impacts are big and life-changing, and some of them are
not. Really, really not.
But the point is, it can affect all facets of life.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Vandal Theory. You can visit our website, uidaho.edu/Vandal Theory, to learn all about our research. Email us at vandaltheory@uidaho.edu with any questions or comments. And make sure to visit us on your favorite podcasting platform to rate, review, and subscribe. My name is Lee Cooper.
And I'm Danae Lenz.
Thank you for listening.